to the extent that they're paying attention to government. But right now, I'm going to be honest, this administration is sending out mixed signals. At the end of the day, whichever signals they're sending out, I personally believe from my legal training that all of it is illegal, regardless of which mixed signals they're sending out. And the question is how quickly we can get into court and whether or not we will have more judges that are more loyal to Trump or if they are more loyal to the Constitution and the oath that they swore.
What's up, good people? Welcome back to the channel. This is Awakened Africa and I'm your host, Bem. On our today's episode, we're going to talk about some of these things that President Trump promised to do when he gets into office. And one of it was about funding freeze. And Representative Jasmine Crockett discusses a concern over funding freeze imposed by the president, emphasizing Congress authority over appropriations. And, she was trying to thank her constituents for her election and highlighting some of the importances of unity among diverse communities. Of course, she called for urgent legislative priorities, particularly civil rights protection and encouraging grassroots engagement to combat divisive politics. So on the issue of crowdfunding, before I give my own comments on it, I would like us to take a look at the video first, and then I'll come back and talk about it. But if you're new to this channel, I'll ask you most definitely to subscribe, and if you're a returning subscriber, then you know what to do: like, comment, and share. Let us watch the video.
Good evening. Sorry to keep you waiting. I decided to do an IG live before I walked in. As you know, there's so many people that are in angst and very concerned with the current administration that has been in for a whopping 8 days. And just imagine, we've got to go through this for a total of 4 years. I think that today will probably mean more to my district than my last swearing in, because we are definitely living in scarier times. And so I am so elated and grateful, number one, to have another opportunity to serve, but more importantly, to be able to share in my swearing in for a second term with the people that send me to DC. And again, the only people that can fire me, regardless of how many other people around the country want me to be fired. I want my district to always know that they will always be my priority and they are always my focus, even when I can't physically be present, because if some of you noticed, I ended up traveling the country, doing my best to try to prevent what is happening right now. And so I am so grateful to my district, because in my absence, they still gave me the strongest numbers of any challenged Democrat or Republican in the state of Texas that was seeking re-election. It was a testament to what they believe I can accomplish and what it is that I was able to accomplish. So with that, that's just my few opening remarks, but I want to make sure I get to y'all's questions. I heard y'all know all the rules, so we can start with whoever wants to go first.
Representative, I'm Teresa Woodard from WFAA,
Yeah.
ABC station here in Dallas. I'd like to talk to you about this
Yeah.
funding freeze.
Yeah.
This is money that Congress
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah.
So, Congresswoman, do you believe that what the president did is legal?
No, I don't. In short, I don't believe that the president has this authority. The president did say as he campaigned that he would be a dictator on day one. It sounds like he's going to continue to try his best to be a dictator. The reality is that we go through appropriations every single year. And when we go through appropriations, number one, that is because there is only one body that has the power of the purse, and that is the Congress. It has to go through 535 people and then be signed into law by one president. And so we have monies that have been appropriated by law. And so no swipe of a pen can just delete that and stop that. And unfortunately, we have someone who has a Supreme Court that he handpicked that has definitely tested the bounds of law. I think right now what we see is we have a president that is going to continue to push those bounds and test those bounds. And unfortunately, if this Supreme Court does not get it right, it will be disastrous for the Republic as a whole. The reality is that I was able to at least get a glimpse into how I feel like the Supreme Court will conduct themselves when it came down to the TikTok ban. Now, I know a lot of people feel a way about TikTok, but from a legal standpoint, at the end of the day, it was signed into law by Biden. And he was attempting to stop what had been signed into law and had been passed through both chambers. And in a 9-0 decision, the Supreme Court determined that he was unable to do that. So with that being said, if they keep up this type of energy, I think that we will see his attempt at getting rid of birthright citizenship, which if you are going to have any protections in this country, the strongest protections aren't even the fact that we pass a law. Our strongest protections arise out of our Constitution in and of itself. And so if you want to undo or change something in the Constitution, well, it takes a lot of work. It's a lot more than just passing a law. We've got to make sure that we have ratification. We've got to go to the states. The states will have to vote, and you got to get 2/3. So I don't think that anything is going to happen to our Constitution just yet, but it is scary that we have someone in the White House that absolutely does not care about the Constitution and does not care about the law, but we knew this. As the only convicted felon to occupy the White House, he's never had any respect for the law, and I honestly don't see him changing his tune anytime soon. Now, we'll see if he ends up running up against a bunch of Eileen Cannon judges who will just ignore the law. But as of right now, I can tell you that at least one district court judge in D.C. has decided that she was going to swipe down some of his attempts. That doesn't deal with everything, though. And to be perfectly honest, the White House is saying one thing, while the OMB office is sending out different things. We also know that the Medicaid website went down. It just so happens that it's allegedly a glitch at the same time that we are saying that no, the OMB said that some of these things are not allowed to receive funding. So, Head Start, Meals on Wheels, SNAP benefits, LIHEP, rural electric funds, all these things are in limbo, as well as infrastructure projects where people literally made contracts knowing that they were getting this money. And so I am applauding those attorney generals in states that are democratically controlled, because those are the attorney generals that have decided to come together. And frankly, if the Republican states are not interested in seeking out the funds that I'm sure Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, the funds that I'm sure that they really need more than some of these other states, then frankly, that's okay. If they don't want their money, then don't get it. We'll take it all. Next.
And I would imagine you're getting a lot of calls from your constituents now. Have you talked to anyone locally? Have they been told anything about how this would directly impact them?
Yeah.
Before the judge?
No, I've not talked to anyone myself. Thank God for my staff. I've not talked to anyone directly. I just know that I've been receiving, if it's someone that has my personal cell phone number, I've been receiving panicked text about everything, from birthright citizenship to whether or not, even when I got my hair done today, as y'all know, I had braids, and I don't anymore, but even my hairstylist was very concerned and was asking questions. So everyone is paying attention, so I will say that he's awakened everyone to the extent that they're paying attention to government. But right now, I'm going to be honest, this administration is sending out mixed signals. At the end of the day, whichever signals they're sending out, I personally believe from my legal training that all of it is illegal, regardless of which mixed signals they're sending out. And the question is how quickly we can get into court and whether or not we will have more judges that are more loyal to Trump, or if they are more loyal to the Constitution and the oath that they swore.
Congresswoman, I'm Dave Tapper from Dallas Voice,
Yes.
your downstairs neighbor. As a strong advocate for civil rights, what do you see as the most urgent legislative priority to protect the LGBT community,
Oh, okay.
especially after some of these horrible executive orders that have come out this week?
Yeah, so I do want to be clear about diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I think that that's really a good place to start. And I always talk to my colleagues, because every time they say, quote unquote, DEI, it's always now like their new slur for black folk, just to be perfectly honest. But diversity, equity, and inclusion includes so much more than that, right? It includes making sure that we're looking at people that are within the LGBTQIA community and making sure that they have protections. It's looking at making sure that those that come from rural America have protections. It's looking at women. It's looking at our uniquely abled citizens. It is looking at basically making sure that we are not just old straight white men. That's it. And it's making sure that everyone has an opportunity. It's making sure that those governmental agencies look like who we are in this country. And so I think that that probably has to be the most urgent thing, because I think that it is all encompassing, and it's looking at our civil rights as a whole. In addition to the fact that what we're experiencing is they went after our education with the affirmative action decision. This is kind of a bleed over, but this all goes to economics, right? At a time in which we still can't get anyone to agree to raise the minimum wage, which hasn't been raised in probably close to 20 years now that we're going on, we see that the billionaire class is continuously, overnight, just making more and more money. I mean, the richest man in the world literally made like another $200 billion like in the few days after the election, right? And so what we've got to do is make sure that, number one, we're not allowing people to divide us, because I will be honest, we were divided in this election about trans folk. That's just a reality. And then Democrats started falling apart about trans folk because they felt as if it was seeping through. The reality is that when we start to talk about trans folk make up probably less than they make up less than 1% of who we are in this country. But if you allow them to divide us over trans rights, then they can divide us over immigration, which they did that as well. It's the division that is killing us, and the reality is that it's not really about whether or not you agree, like it, love it, or understand it. It's about understanding that this is supposed to be the land of opportunity and the land of the free for all. And so we've got to stand together. So the one plea that I will have is that I want us to stand together. Let's stand with our LGBTQIA community. Let's stand with our immigrant community. Let's stand with black folk. Let's stand with women. Let's stand together, because there's more of us than there are of the select few that are pushing this white supremacy agenda. We cannot get caught up in it. And when you look back at the playbook of Hitler, when you look back at the playbook of the KKK, it never was just about black people. It's the exact same people that they're pointing fingers at and that they went after. And so I am encouraging everyone to stand together.
Congresswoman, you mentioned that the last 8 days have been a lot of information, and while you're a great messenger for the Democrats, it doesn't really feel like there's been one central message. I know there's a lot to respond to, but over the next 4 years, how do Democrats, start on kind of fixing this messaging problem and actually coming together and responding to some of these things that are being thrown at y'all?
Yeah, so the chaos makes it difficult. I will say that. And we are absolutely drinking from a fire hose. I think that I speak for the leader when I say that I think we are in agreement that we have to figure out what are the three most disastrous things. Because when you think of how the human brain works, it can't take all this in. It's too much, right? And so when we went through the continuing resolution fight where there was a tweet and all of a sudden everything fell apart, one thing that we learned is that if we just kind of pointed to some things that usually we can all agree on, we can all agree that it's always bad to go after kids, right? And so the fact that they were cutting the funding for childhood cancer research, that was something that was salient across the board. That was so we have to find at least the three things that we feel like hit across the board. So every time we feel like they're going after Social Security, we need to go ahead and talk about it, because that is a big deal. Anytime they're talking about children, we need to go ahead and make sure that we talk about it. And anytime we're talking anything about our seniors as well, and our veterans tend to be another group of people. We need to find the 3 most impactful worst things and talk about those and hammer them. Once we do that, I think that we also have to understand that Democrats love to dig into the minutia. We will tell you about the entire 1,000-page bill, and we will talk way over your head. That is not the way to go. A simple message with 3 points. And we also need to understand that while I appreciate everybody that's standing here, we've got to communicate in every single way, right? Not just legacy media. We've got to make sure, like I'll be starting a podcast that I'm going to run myself. There are no Democrats that have podcasts, which is terrible. But that is information on demand, and it allows those that really want to get a fuller message than you can get off of TikTok to be able to do that. We've got to make sure that we're being effective on social media. We've got to make sure that we're engaging in radio as well as going to some places that we've never been. So this first term taught me that I never thought that I'd end up in Vogue magazine, Essence magazine, Ebony magazine. But listen, we need to be in the hunting magazines. We need to be in the fishing magazines. We need to be everywhere because politics impacts all of us. Instead of just making sure that we're focusing in on those that typically talk about politics. I was blessed with an opportunity to go on The View. I was blessed with being able to go on Jimmy Kimmel. We've got to go where the people are. And so I think that we've got to figure out which messengers can be versatile enough to get into some of those other spaces. And we've got to make sure that we're doing that, as well as we just got to get back to like grassroots work. We need to go ahead and go into communities, not when we're seeking a vote, but when we're literally just going in and we're listening and we're educating people on what's happening. So we need to have town halls, and we need to do town halls outside of our safe blue districts. We need to be going into rural America, explaining to them that the reason that your hospitals are shutting down is because of Republican policies. We need to explain to them that the reason they've been able to modernize their farming is because Democrats were the ones that pushed for rural broadband while Republicans voted against it. We need to educate people on why our policies work, because they work. We saw that every time there was a ballot measure that was on the ballot, even in places like my home state of Missouri, somehow they voted for abortion access and then sent an anti-abortion senator back to the Senate. I don't really get it, but our policies do work. And so we've got to make sure that we're educating people on the fact that we are fighting for them and not fighting against them, as it seems like we are about to endure for at least some time.
Congresswoman Crockett, just on one note, on a lighter note, any more nicknames for Marjorie Taylor?
No, we're going to let this one go down in history for her.
Zahaya Carter, Dallas Weekly. Do you have anything to say to representatives who still find themselves supporting Trump after this 1 week?
Find your backbone. When I ended up enduring the nonsense that I went through with Nancy Mace most recently, what people don't know is that I was arguing for the Civil Rights Subcommittee to be added back to oversight. That's it. It was just an organizational meeting. She then responded, and I was explaining to them in that moment, to be clear, that I wanted them to have a fraction of the courage that members carried in the 1960s. And I told them the story of the flight that I took the day of President Carter's funeral, and how I was on that flight with Lucy Baines Johnson, and how she told me the story of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, but more specifically, she was talking to me about the Voting Rights Act when I was explaining to them, and how they went over to the Congress so that her dad could sign the bill into law. The reason was that he said that he knew that there were members that voted for the Voting Rights Act, which meant that they knew that they would not be coming back to Congress, because part of that was making sure seats like mine existed, legacy seats, Section 2 seats existed. And so because of that, he said, listen, I didn't ask them to come to the White House. I needed to go to their house. And I needed to show them that I thanked them and I appreciated them. And I said, I'm just asking y'all to have a fraction of the courage that they had back in the 1960s, because they signed up to do what was right. The issue that we have in this country right now is it seems like we don't understand right from wrong, at least one side doesn't. And I'm just asking them to go back to their roots, because there are Republicans that will tell me privately that they disagree with this stuff, but they would never dare cross him. They are afraid of him. They are afraid of losing their seats. But sometimes, in fact, these times, we demand courage of our elected officials. And I will say that is from both sides of the aisle. It is time out for playing politics, because we may not survive if we don't stand up and do what's right.
Congresswoman, what is one specific local priority you have that you want to accomplish this term that you want to accomplish that?
Accomplishments, that's a loaded question. Listen, I mean, right now I'm just trying to stop the bleeding, if I'm being perfectly honest. If there are things that I think that I should accomplish, it would be around criminal justice reform, considering the fact that there's a felon in the White House. I feel like I should get some help on my Democracy Restoration Act, which means that those that have been criminally impacted will have access to the ballot box, because now that he's been finally convicted, he won't even be able to vote for, city council in a minute. So hopefully they'll join me in that. I worked very closely with our senior senator as it relates to fentanyl, and there's a ton of fentanyl bills that we did. A lot of that kind of picked up from the State House. And so hopefully we can get some reforms around that, since they claim that their big fight with the border is about fentanyl and making sure they can keep drugs out. So hopefully they'll listen to one of the few people that actually practice criminal law and understand what drug addiction looks like, and how to really work on it. And again, this is bipartisan, bicameral legislation. So hopefully I'll get somewhere on that. I don't really expect that we're going to get very much done, though. It was the most unproductive session that we've had in modern day history, and that was when the Republicans only controlled the House. Now they control all three levers. So I don't anticipate that there's very much that I'll get done, and that's just me being honest. I'm looking at her because she's keeping time. All right, so we've got time for 2 more questions.
What's your response? What would you say to North Texans who are frightened or nervous about these mass deportations? 90 people were arrested on Sunday. Just kind of what implications does that have for our community, and how do immigrants move forward during this time?
Yeah, so number one, I just want to say my heart goes out to really our entire community, because, we talk about immigrants, but the reality is that when I look at somebody, I can't look around this room and tell you who's who. I can't. And nor can ICE. So the reality is that this is going to impact all of us directly and indirectly. So my heart goes out to our communities, because there are going to be people that are mistakenly rounded up, people that are here lawfully, and it's a travesty. But I don't know that I have the power to stop much of anything. I am relying on my courts to really put their foot down and to be the checks and balances that our founders thought that we should have. And that's going to be on the courts to say, listen, you've gone too far. We've got to stop here. So I can tell you that organizations like LULAC are on the front lines of this. I can tell you that the ACLU is on the front lines of things like this. And it is my hope, again, that we will have judges that will remember the oath that they took and recognize that Donald Trump was not a part of that oath, and will do what they need to do. As of now, if I was to pull off my political hat and put on my attorney hat, I'm going to say keep yourself safe. Keep yourself safe. If you know that you are here legally, make sure you are walking everywhere you can with your paperwork at all times. I also want to say that I'm proud to be right here in Dallas County, where at least I know my local officials aren't trying to call and have raids taken out in their communities. They understand the contributions that immigrants make to this country. They understand that just because someone calls you illegal, that is not a thing. We have people that are undocumented. We have people that have tried to go through the process, and unfortunately, because there are those that feel like it wasn't worth the investment, people historically have been waiting before COVID 6 to 7 years to try to get anywhere in the courts. And all they want to do now is defund, defund, defund. We need to invest so that if somebody is actually coming into this country to harm us, we can get them out immediately. But those that are coming to contribute and work, we need to make sure that they are getting processed and they are paying taxes. And to be clear, undocumented folk contribute approximately $100 billion in taxes. They pay into Social Security and they don't get to draw down on it. So stop, again, allowing them to divide us and to demonize them. Last question.
Congresswoman, what do you say to folks who are just tired, healthcare workers, educators, social justice folks, and they are having trouble getting the momentum to keep going in this new administration?
I will try to paraphrase what the vice president said in her concession speech, when her concession speech definitely shouldn't have been a concession. I will say that she reminded us that the only time we see stars is in darkness. The reality is that this is our time to shine. You cannot allow this darkness to get you down. This is when you can be seen, because we are going through the trials and tribulations. No matter how loud so many of us screamed, we couldn't be seen because it wasn't dark enough. This is our opportunity. We know what the playbook looks like because we've been here before, but we have more tools at our disposal. We need to use those tools, we need to use them for good, and we need to push back and get this country back on track. Thank you so much.
Hey good people, welcome back to the channel. This is Wicked Africa. So I hope all of us have watched that video, and I want to give some key highlights on what Representative Jasmine Crockett was talking about. So she's really concerned about the current administration's actions, emphasizing the Democrats' commitment to serving their district and to serving their people. Of course, she's talking about herself, her commitment to serving her district and the potential dangers posed by the executive overreach, which highlights the importance of congregational authority and constitutional protections in governance. And her concerns, the concerns she raises over president's authority and potential executive overreach, particularly regarding funding decisions that should be managed by the Congress. This underscores the critical separation of powers. Let it be known that President Trump talked about funding freeze when he gets into office, but here Jasmine Crockett highlights that funding decisions are managed by the Congress and not the office of the president at White House. So there is an underscore on the critical separation of powers, that President Trump, he does what he's meant to do, and the Congress, they do what they're meant to do. And the discussion includes the implication of recent Supreme Court rulings and the influence on the executive actions, of course, especially in relation to laws passed by the Congress, which points to the judiciary roles in upholding the Constitution. And we can talk about the concerns that are rising about the current administration in about the current administration disregard to the Constitution, especially with a convicted felony in the White House. This situation might create uncertainty regarding to legal protections and funding for various programs. So when you talk about funding freeze, it's not possible because there is a job that Trump is supposed to do, and there is a job that the Congress people are supposed to do. And the role of attorney generals from democratically controlled states is crucial, as they of course collaborate to address funding issues. The actions highlight a stark contrast with the approach of the Republican states that may ignore necessary funds. It is said that some of these Republicans are kind of ignorant. Let it be known that President Donald Trump is a Republican. And the impact of the administration of mixed signals leads to confusion among constituents regarding essential services and legal rights. Many citizens are increasingly alarmed and seeking clarity on these issues. So, yeah, for instance, the focus on diversity, equity, and the inclusion is essential for protecting marginalized communities, especially the LGBTQ population. Urgent legislative priorities are needed to ensure these groups receive adequate protections. President Trump, the other day, he was talking about let boys be boys, men be men, and he went further and asked the transgender inmates who are held in women correctional centers to be taken back to men correctional centers. So Jasmine Crockett tries to highlight that the rights of these individuals are supposed to be protected because Trump said that there are only two genders in the United States of America, that is the male and the female. And she goes further to explain that ensuring representation in government and society is crucial for civil rights and equality, which must unite across various communities to combat divisive tactics and promote inclusivity. Let it also be known that there are so many issues, like the economic disparities that are highlighted by stagnant minimum wage level alongside the increasing wealth of the billionaire class, whereby there is a very huge gap that illustrates the urgent need for economic reform to ensure fairness. And the divisive issues such as those surrounding trans rights risk undermining unity among marginalized groups. It's vital to recognize commonalities to strengthen collective efforts against systemic oppression. Effective communication is also an issue which is crucial for political engagement, particularly for reaching seniors and veterans. Simply messaging and diverse platform enhance understanding and involvement in political issues. And of course, utilizing various media platforms like podcasts and social media helps conveying political messages effectively. Engaging with audiences in diverse environments broadens the reach of critical information. Of course, utilizing various media and of course, grassroots efforts are essential for genuine community connection. Engaging in town halls and outside self-districts fosters understanding of political impacts on rural America. So, one thing that I want to point out is that, which is very essential, the courage of the elected official to stand and to take a stand for what is right, especially regarding voting rights and justice reform. The current political dynamics hinder this courage in partner legislation and community trust, where the importance of legacy seats and Section 2 seats in protecting voting rights is emphasized, highlighting the historical significance of past legislative efforts, which these measures were crucial for representation. And of course, criminal justice reforms is identified as a pressing priority, especially for those impacted by the legal system. The Speaker advocates for the Democracy Restoration Act to enhance voting access. Concern about mass deportation and community impacts are raised, emphasizing the need for compassion and understanding, whereby Crockett, Representative Crockett, called for checks and balances through the judicial system to protect individuals. Of course, the ACLU plays a crucial role in advocating for justice, especially regarding immigration issues. It's essential to ensure that immigrants are not unjustly labeled or treated as illegal without recognition of their contributions. So there are so many issues that Representative Jasmine Crockett was talking about here, from the funding freeze up to immigrations, the rights of the LGBTQIA community. So I think this is a very broad issue. This is a huge conversation, and we need to talk about it in the comment section. And of course, I'll ask you, if you're new to this channel, most definitely kindly subscribe. If you're a returning subscriber, kindly like, share, and comment. This is A Week in Africa. I'm your host, Bemo, and of course, I love you guys. Peace out.